It's Matt, and we're back with another restaurant expert roundup. This time we have somebody from the restaurant tech world and the podcast world. We'll be back in a second. Feel like I gotta get the headphones when that beat hits, and kind of like have a little turntable.
That's really fun. I dig it.
So, Jenifer, tell us about you and tell us about what you do for a living, and we'll dig into everything else.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Kern. I am the Chief Marketing Officer, otherwise known as CMO, although I call myself a mama de marketing, a la Julia, at Q. And Q is a POS, what we now term as a unified commerce system. And what we do is we unify all of the ordering, kitchen, and production processes for large multi-unit restaurants, meaning what we call enterprise restaurants, but they could be multi-brand, but we typically work over 25 locations and up because it's a whole different ballgame for restaurants when they're scaling above 25. We go into the thousands of units, and you can imagine all the different channels, all the different menus, all the different systems. And what we help do is we don't say we're your single source for a system, but we do create a unification in the back end so that the order management for the operators and the menus for the operators is easier to manage. And for the guests, it should look pretty seamless as well. But let's just face it, this whole BS about like frictionless, seamless experience, it doesn't exist.
No, I always crack up when I hear that type of stuff because I've got a couple high-end cars, and I've had a bunch my whole life, and it's comical because the same crap that happens with my son's Honda Civic happens with my exotic car. And it's like, it's faster. It looks cooler. It's got handmade curves, but at the end of the day, they still have the same issues. And technology, I hear people say, oh, we have this 99% less this. Like, well, you still got 1% of it. So let's just be honest, it's happening. So where are you located at, by the way?
I'm just outside of Washington, D.C. I'm in McLean, Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you? Where are you?
I am in northern Kentucky. I'm right near Cincinnati, Ohio. So as we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Peter and Ray Wiley and Kelly Gray here with the Hothead and formerly Rapid Fire, because they use Q. That's how I heard about Q a couple of years ago. But I'm just an hour and 15 minutes south of them. Okay.
Awesome. It's a beautiful part of the country. Beautiful.
It is amazing. And you mentioned you have a 20-year-old son, so you have a couple kids, right? Or one or two or 10?
I have 3 boys.
3 boys. How old?
So my stepson is 30. My oldest is 25. He's in the Navy.
Okay.
He's at Fleet Week up in New York right now. And my youngest is 23.
Okay. I've got a son just turned 18, and my daughter is turning 20 next month, but she thinks she's like 46. So whole different story. And, she comes home from college the other day, and she's got a sticker on the back of her Jeep that my wife sent me because she figured I'd be at the driveway with a razor blade.
I like her already. She drives a Jeep.
She drives a Jeep, and the sticker on the back, she's just like me. So I had to take it for what it was. And then the joke, it says, "My other ride's your dad." And I saw this, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with my daughter? Then I'm like, oh, I can actually see me putting that on a car. So, okay. I guess she's got her dad's humor.
That's so funny. Do you know what my Jeep? Well, I have a couple of stickers on the back of my Jeep, but my favorite sticker says anti-millennial theft device. And there's an image of a stick shift in the middle. I drive a stick shift.
Funny story was my daughter. This is my daughter's 3rd Jeep. And she had 3 of them by the time she was 16 to 17 because the first one I bought her was a stick shift. I'm like, hey, I'm getting my daughter. I know what kind of moron I was. I had a Jeep when I was 16. Jeeps can't go fast. If it's a stick shift, she can't text. So I got her a stick shift. Well, my daughter's 4'11", a college cheerleader. She's like 105 pounds, probably like a little ball of muscles. And she gets the car, and she has it for like 4 or 5 months. In Kentucky, you have to drive for 6 months on a learner's permit before you can drive full time. Well, apparently during that time, unbeknownst to me, she's usually driving my wife's Infiniti, not the Jeep, because she couldn't drive the Jeep because she couldn't get the clutch all the way to the ground because of just her height and the strength it took with that. And so like she's the daughter, she's the baby of the family, the firstborn. And she calls me, my wife, I guess it happened right around, I was out of town the week after Christmas when she got her permanent license. And her mom, my wife, was like, your dad's not going to get you another car. Learn how to drive it. She calls me just crying. And I had already come to the conclusion that I wouldn't mind having another Jeep, relive my 16-year-old, teenage days. And so I had a feeling that was coming, and she called me like, I can't drive. This life's ruined. And so I said, no problem. When I get home tomorrow, we'll go buy you a different Jeep. I'll take your Jeep. And then I got cheap on that Jeep, and those damn things don't depreciate. And so I got her a cheaper 4-door version that was an automatic, and it turned out to be a piece of crap. So then 6 months later, I got her a more dependable one. I had to fork out like $30K. So she had a Jeep to go to college in, and my wife didn't want her dying. So now she's got a fancy, nice Jeep that will get her back and forth from college. And she's on her 3rd Jeep, and the stick shift didn't work, but you're right. It probably is anti anybody under 40 years old.
Daddy's girl, daddy's little girl.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I guess the second thing is you've got the podcast as well. And somebody asked on here, can we ask questions on here? Yeah. Garrett Nichols, you can ask away, brother, and I'll do my best to answer them. The other aspect of your world, and I found you because, well, full disclosure, Gabe on my team who finds badasses in the technology, marketing, podcast, author world found you. I knew what Q was from Peter Wiley. I knew that Peter was on the podcast, I think twice, if I remember. There was 2 episodes. And
well,
so,
yeah, I think it was so good I had to continue, and I didn't, we had to cut it off at one point. And so I did a second one, with him.
So the podcast is Restaurants Reinvented. Was it invented because of the pandemic and a way to communicate and help restaurants adapt technology in 2022?
Sort of, but not really. So I like meditating. So I was meditating, and I was trying to think early in the pandemic, because there was nothing else to do, what I was going to do with all this free time. 80% of my budget is in events. So the restaurant industry still goes and does trade shows. It seems crazy, like coming from SaaS, where I came from pure tech SaaS environment. But those were obviously over. And so I said, how can I give back and help this industry right now? And this guy was like robo-dialing me to do a podcast. I'm like, stop calling me. I'm never going to do a podcast. I'm never going to do it. And then one day I was thinking about and being mindful and meditating, how I could help. And it came to me that marketing in this industry is really behind. And this was 3 years ago. Well, I started my podcast 2 years ago. But when I came into the industry, I had been in tech, SaaS startup tech, pretty much created the CMO position in late 2000s, right? And they gave the CMOs a seat at the table and said, you are strategic business decision makers in the company. You're visionary. I was always given a seat at the table and considered a strategic visionary in the company. And then I come into the restaurant industry, restaurant tech industry, and I'm like, all of these marketing folks on the brand side, like huge restaurants owning 3 different companies, thousands of units, they have a director of marketing as the most senior person at the company in marketing. I'm like, or a marketing manager, most senior person. And they all told me that they were pretty much considered the arts and crafts department.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, okay, so maybe I have an opportunity here to get back during the pandemic, give these companies a platform to shine, free marketing, podcasting, right?
Yep.
But elevate the conversation that restaurant marketers are having to a strategic level, not just tactical. We always used to say, be a market maker, not an order taker, right? Yep. And so marketing isn't about taking orders and getting the POP done and making sure the colors match. And I mean, okay, that's some of it, but deciding the direction of the company and understanding where the market is going is the most important aspect of marketing. And so I wanted to elevate the conversation and have on really smart marketers at leading brands who were kind of leading and pushing their brands forward during the pandemic, which, by the way, marketing became more pivotal, right?
That's why my company tripled.
Exactly. Because technology lagged behind, the role of marketing lagged behind. So all that sort of came together for me. I went to my CEO. I said, I got this idea. He said, go for it. And I've been off and running ever since. But the name of it, Restaurants Reinvented, is because we all need to reinvent how we're thinking about restaurants today. Restaurants need to reinvent not only the technology, the culture, the way they look at labor and employees, their operations, their digital channels, their marketing, like the whole thing. It's just like reinvent. And it's also like kind of a personal mantra of mine. I always feel like you always like evolve or die. You always need to be reinventing yourself. Right. So I don't know. That's my soapbox. I'm done.
No, I love it. And you reminded me of something there at the end that a friend of mine had said a couple months ago, that he was comparing growth of one of his friends' companies. Like he grows 4 to 5% every year. And he's like, you realize you're growing less than the economy. And if you grow less than the economy, you die eventually. Like we grew, like April was 86%, March was 89%. And we grow pretty hot and heavy, our company. We tripled during, we got our butt kicked for a few months during the pandemic, but then we tripled because restaurants had more of an appreciation for people that had the ability to get their word out to customers, say how to order, how to buy, how to pick it up, why to come back. And so his comment was about the businesses need to realize if they don't consistently reinvent themselves, they don't consistently update. We have a team meeting at 9 o'clock. I have it with my sales team. At 9:30, I have it with our operations team. And at 10 o'clock, I have it with our production team, because we have, in our company, sales, marketing, and operations are the three main things. And marketing is more production for us. And we have a meeting every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's 15 to 30 minutes. And the goal is, how can we find one thing to fix today or add or tweak? And if we have 50, like today at our operations team was our build team, the people who take tech and help restaurants build databases. And we came up with a cool idea. And I said, imagine if for 52 weeks, the next 52 weeks, and we do it the next 3 to 4 years, how many little tweaks we can make in the build department, what that would make. And I think the problem I've seen with restaurants is they're too busy, even before the pandemic, they're too busy working in the business versus working on it. And you mentioned meditating. The studio is called Deep Work Studios, off the book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. I love to read. And one thing he talks about in there is getting away from your devices, getting away from your business. So you can, in essence, like business meditate, where you can find these ways to reinvent your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just, stepping away. I mean, we've always been taught that in marketing, right? Like get out from behind your desk and go walk in the shoes of your customer, walk in the shoes of your salespeople, like see what's actually going on. And, those lessons go a long way, a really long way. And I was just reading a LinkedIn post actually about this, about how like some of the best companies were invented during times when people went away, like traveling. And I'm not going to be able to quote them. You'll know the companies, but recent startup successful companies in products and whatnot. One of them was the yogurt company, Noosi, Noosi. Yeah. But these ideas came to the founders when they went away, and stepped away.
No, I love it. And it's key. Yesterday, my cell phone died. I was leaving. I think my dad to the doctor. He works here part-time, and he wanted to ride to the doctor. I said, I'll go with you. I'll take a couple hours off. And we went down to the doctor, and I have this habit of letting my phone die because
I love it. I love it.
I don't use it most of the time during the day anyways. And when he gets all upset, like we get there, we got like 30 minutes to kill. And then his doctor, because we're driving 5 minutes away. Of course, he wants to leave 45 minutes early. I didn't know this. I just left when he said, hey, let's go. And we get there. I'm like, what time's your appointment? 4:15. I'm like, it's like 3:30, bro. I didn't know how long it would take us. I'm like, it's down the street. Like, you don't know this? So we get down there, and I had an interview I was on real quick with somebody, and phone went dead. I say, hey, my phone's going dead. He's like, I can't believe it. Your phone good. I go, guess what? I have 2 hours to have a conversation with you now. And sure enough, after his doctor went with him and I went to dinner, there's no cell phone. I have no distraction. I have no laptop. I have no employees coming to my office. And we came up with 2 ideas during that meal from just not being distracted.
Right.
And that's a key element that is out there that people don't realize. And that's why we put Deep Work on our studio. You can pull down different colors because we have different podcasts out in here, but we have this one for my podcast because I'm adamant that people need to get deeper in what they do for a daily basis. And to me, that's technology, that's marketing. And kind of going back to what you said, we're a little different animal. We never stopped during the pandemic because I saw the opportunity to help more. So I literally every 2 weeks for the past 5 years, I've been on the road up until 2 months ago. I quit traveling. My team now travels, but I was at different restaurants nationwide, pretty much at least 20 every 2 weeks for 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Woo. And what amazed me, the reason I did that was I wanted to see, because I've got people running my company. I don't do anything in the day-to-day. I'm useless when it comes day-to-day except advice and an ear to bend. But me seeing in person what was out there helped our company, helped restaurants pivot a little, because I've always joked the last 5 to 6 years that restaurants are 20 years behind the technology curve, even the big ones. Like I run across big brands that are 300, 400, 500 locations. And I'm like, you guys are still using like a calculator and a pen and a paper to ring your customers up. Like what the hell's wrong with you? And then, and so then going on the road though, and seeing it, it still amazes me that to this day, I think restaurants for the most part are still 5 to 10 years behind what's happening. And the one great thing that came out of the pandemic for me was restaurants finally realized like people are on this thing. I don't know if you ever heard Sean Walchef or not, but Sean has a restaurant called Cali BBQ Meat out in California. He's got
yeah.
So Sean and I actually have a podcast that we filmed in person here. It starts a weekly podcast in about a month called Own Their Phones. And the concept is how his company hired our company to complement what he does digitally with storytelling, with us doing data and marketing, all that good stuff. But the concept behind it is the fact that like my 18-year-old, my 20-year-old, my 45-year-old, my 75-year-old dad are on their damn phone all the time. And restaurants have this huge advantage of, labor, for example. I can order, like today, I ordered an acai bowl from a restaurant. I literally ordered on my phone. I walked in, they said, "There's Matt." They grabbed my bag, they handed it to me, I left. 3 years ago, I would have stood in line because they didn't have online ordering. I would have waited 5 minutes. I would have made my order. I would have waited 20 minutes. This is an easy technology that restaurant was forced to put in place when the pandemic hit. And then now they've kept it, and it's made life so much easier for me. And I'm sure it's made their turns quicker.
Yeah.
So talk about like what you see with technology and like what you're dealing with. We deal with a lot of independents, 1, 2, 3 location, and some smaller regional franchise like Hothead. What are you seeing that can trickle down to everybody from a technology standpoint that these restaurants haven't adapted yet, or they are, and like it needs to get bigger?
I was at NRA this past week, and I actually met a brand that was just 8 locations, that has an incredibly sophisticated and smart technology strategy. And you mentioned like there's some 400, 500. So I guess I want to say that even though our company specializes in the larger multi-unit change, because that's what our technology is best for, the most important thing is just to have a good sound strategy for tech. And so, to riff off of what you were just talking about, what I saw during the pandemic was, like you said, a lot of these companies realizing, is there an echo? Are we okay?
We're good.
Okay. A lot of these companies realizing that they didn't have the technology they needed to compete in the digital marketplace. So, and you even talk about like digital marketing. Like I've been doing digital marketing since 2005. Okay. I'm not saying I'm some great shakes, but that's just when HubSpot came onto the scene, marketing and technology converged, digital marketing became the way forward. Restaurants were really not forced to adapt that because it was still so much, 80, 90% of their business was still in person. Well, that equation completely flipped in the pandemic, where there's restaurants now built solely on digital, right? So yeah, I'm not surprised your business has quadrupled, right? Like now it's like, oh my God, digital marketing is so important. But also having a really sound technology, just having a strategy is also important. So what I saw a lot of these companies doing, yes, particularly the small, but a lot of companies just ran out and acquired all this tech that was being given away for free during the pandemic, so they could get their online ordering stood up really quick and at the lowest cost. And now they have a pretty high technology, what I'd call debt, or what I'd call more relatable terms, sort of like a leaning tower of Pisa of technology, where all this stuff is bolted on. And if you really want to be able to do meaningful human marketing, personalized, I call it human, and bringing the humanity back to hospitality type of marketing, you need to know who your people are, who's coming in the store, who's shopping online. You want to know that. You can't know that if you don't have a way to marry all those systems together and the data together. So that's what I'm really passionate about, is just having a sound strategy, no matter what your size is. Just don't go out and acquire shit because, the guy next door or your friend who's also a franchisee told you about it. It might not work for you. Find what's going to work for you and build your business on your strategy, not the other way around. And vision and goals. Like, what kind of business do you want to be? Like, I'm pretty opinionated about bringing that hospitality back to the business. Like, yeah, you can go on and order an acai bowl all day long, but how is that restaurant really earning your business?
Yep.
When you go in and pick up your bowl, what is your experience?
Yep.
What are the things they're doing to follow up with you and letting you know that they give a poop about you, right? To market back to you. Like, That's what I'm really passionate about is that human touch.
I'm glad you said that. This is comical. I've been having this, what's the word I'm looking for? Like this struggle. I got like a little person on each shoulder arguing. So I order, the place is called Better Blend, and I order there pretty much 7 days a week because it's my way of not eating crappy food. I'll get an acai bowl, I'll get a protein shake, pretty much every lunch. And a nice dinner.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have an acai bowl place. I just want to tell you, I looked at the calories the other day.
Oh yeah.
1,200 calories in an acai bowl.
Yeah. Depends which one you get. Yeah. Mine's about 700 and a lot of sugar, but it's natural and it keeps me from eating fried chicken and French fries.
Okay.
So because that's my downfall. So I've been struggling because every time you order now on their online order, it automatically adds the tip. And so I'm a person, I always tip 30, 40. I tipped 50% at a steakhouse a couple weeks ago. My daughter's like, this guy's getting $150. And I'm like, well, yeah, he did an unbelievable job. Like it is what it is. And she was blown away. And I'm like, I recognize game with game. And so I always struggle with like the online ordering apps now because I'm like, are they actually doing anything? Because like I want to tip, but at the same time, all I'm doing is ordering and picking up. Well, today I walk in is a great example. And I've been kind of looking for this sign of what I should be doing because I'll tip sometimes, I tip, don't tip sometimes. Well, today I tipped and I walk in and it's like a $9 purchase, like a $2 tip. So I walk in, there's this giant line. There's people everywhere. There's like probably 20 people in this little place. And the guy from behind the counter looks up and sees me. The girl looks over and she sees me. They recognize me. It's funny because my orders come through as Christy, my wife. No clue why. But for my orders always come through as Christy Plapp, even though she's never ordered from my phone, but it's tied to some other point of sale, I guess. And they look up and they make eye contact. They walk over the fridge, they grab it, they work their way through 5 people and go, here you go, Matt. Thanks, brother. And so for me, that's like, I'm like, okay, shit, I'm tipping every day now because that right there, the fact, and it happens a lot, but to just seeing it where there was nobody in there, like that was the added touch for me. The fact that they saw me and they were doing their job, but while they were doing it, they went ahead and did it. So I had to wait behind 5 people. So that was, that's key for me.
That's a beautiful thing. That what you just described to me as a beautiful thing. And that's more the anomaly today than the rule. Yeah.
Well, I think it comes down to the leadership and the people caring that they're there and that it's more than a job. But one of the things you said also, which I relate to a lot, I use the analogy of partially built bridges. I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not, but I say we got the Ohio River here right across from you, 10 minutes from me. That you got to cross the bridge to get to Ohio. And if as an operator, if they didn't have any of these bridges and they built partial bridge halfway across and then got, oh no, shiny object. I got this bolt on. I got this new review product. And they built that partially. Oh shit, an email responder. Next thing you know, we got the Ohio River, we got Ohio, we got Kentucky, and we're just falling into the river because there's 10 partially built bridges. And what I've seen with restaurants, I talked to one this morning. Guy's got one location in Orlando. He's got like 6 items. They have data coming in and one of them's going here, one's going here, one's going here. And he's like, hey, I need you guys, because part of our company, ABR, attract, build, retain, our build team underneath it's called the tech team. That we're not a place that we see you got to use our tech. We look at what restaurants use and say, okay, what are you using for your point of sale? What's your loyalty? What's your app? What's your email? What's your text? And let's make sure they work together and have a conversation. But that's a huge thing. Like what you mentioned is, especially during the pandemic, because things were sped up. Now, all of a sudden, I had to have online order. I had to have this notification system. I had to have something that told the people that curbside their order was ready and it was coming out. And they started bolting on a lot of things that were either free or cheap or that a friend recommended. And now here they are 2 years later with 18 items hooked up that there's probably 1 or 2 out there that can fix all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. When you were talking about that bridge, I was thinking it's like in the restaurants, they jump off on the little boats and they go out all the different ways. And so they got all these people, and especially if you take it one step further with like the franchisee model, you got franchisees on this system. I mean, we have some customers who, when we start working with them, they have 10, 15 different points of sale.
Yeah.
In one company.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen, yeah.
So they're jumping off of different boats and they're rowing different directions. I mean, how sustainable is that going to be? And how affordable is that going to be?
No, I agree. And my funny story with you, I mentioned this before we got on the air, and then we'll get to Garrett's got a question on here that I'm not sure exactly how to answer, but I'm sure you got a better answer. I remember when Peter, I was sitting in a meeting up at the Hothead Burritos headquarters, and it was Peter Wiley and Kelly Gray and Ray Wiley, and we're doing something about marketing. And then Peter's frantically getting blown up. He's like, hold on, I got to take this. I don't know what's going on. and they had just, and I don't know the whole process, but I think they were rolling out your system Q in different, like this market, maybe the Cincinnati market, Dayton market, whatever, but they were rolling it out in system. It wasn't system wide ASAP, but it went pretty quick. And I guess the boxes, everything went out and it had like a paper on it that said, do not open until this date. And it was this whole game plan. And so he comes back and he's like, man, this franchisee, like, what happened? He goes, well, he's not even supposed to be on the system yet. And what does he do 15 minutes before the shift starts? He starts installing all this new stuff. It's all broke. It's all screwed up. And he's got to take orders in like 5 minutes. And he helped him get it fixed. They got it rolling. But he's like, man, sometimes people don't listen. They just, the box, he like showed me an example. Like, I think it had like this giant thing on it that said, do not open until this date. And it was like a month early.
Yeah, it's complicated equipment. I mean, we're a software company, but we're also a systems company, and that's with POS. I mean, you want all the online ordering, but you also want your in-store to be really stable. Yeah. And so there's cabling and there's wires and there's a proper way to set it up and configure it. And so that's probably why the instructions weren't there.
So here's 2 questions from Garrett. Okay. I've never heard of this, a cash discount program. That would be new to me. I've never heard of that one. And then also crypto payments. So Garrett asks, how do you guys feel about cash discount programs and then about crypto payments? I know Peter actually mentioned, because they've got their giant crypto farm. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's so cool. Like I was in it about 3 weeks ago. It's wild. So I know that we'll go tackle the cash discount. Have you seen restaurants offering a discount for paying cash?
No.
I don't think I've ever seen that. I've seen people
Is
charge
that
a surcharge.
By that, or does he mean you get cash back?
Oh, I don't know. If you're still watching, Garrett, let us know. But I would imagine from what I read is a cash discount program, meaning like I know restaurants someplace, if you pay with a credit card, that you get charged an extra fee for that, which I thought was not supposed to be allowed. This other question said the zero processing where you pass the process. Oh, okay. So basically you got 90% of your customers are paying with credit card and you're paying a 2.3% fee, but these 10% come in with cash. I've never seen that. I'm not going to say I wouldn't see it, but I'd probably be the cashless society in about a year anyways, I would imagine.
Not a year, but maybe soon.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating. Yeah, soon. Yeah. I asked the question about crypto. What do you guys see with crypto? Have you heard that? Was that at the NRA show?
Oh yeah, we're very bullish about crypto. And my husband's in crypto. So, I mean, and I know Peter wants to push us into crypto. I mean, we'd love to be able to take crypto as a payment form, honestly. He's the only customer we have asking us right now. Because I think it is, we need to get a little bit more folks using it probably before we start rolling that out. But I think that would be fantastic. It's definitely going to come. It's just a matter of when. Our infrastructure is very well suited to handle it though, because we're not in bed with, like, a lot of POS systems have their own processing system that they own, and they lock restaurants into certain fees. Like he was saying, like there's a fee structure, they get locked in, it's not negotiable. We do not do that to restaurants. We do not believe that's ethical. Actually, we say, like, you can go with whatever payment processor you want to. If you want to change, you change. We're just going to go ahead and integrate and pass those fees, whatever fee it is, that they're charging over. But if we could do crypto, that would be like, I think it would actually simplify our side of the business, because the scanning, the scanners, the devices. I mean, I cannot tell you how much of our customer support is on the payment devices. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And I'm not going to name the companies, but they're a nightmare.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them. It's my story about that, which I kind of crack up over, because it's commonly, there's companies that back in the day would market their loyalty program, and it's this cool loyalty or this cool product for marketing your restaurant. And if you kind of can see through the BS, it's tied to a credit card processing. And I'll never forget, because I had this guy that was hot and heavy on me, and we had a 4-location brand that did about 25 million a year between them in sales, a big casual dining brand. And we handled all the marketing. We did everything for them, and kind of, this is 10 years ago, launched them in the digital, all that stuff. And this guy was pounding on me for this new thing. He had loyalty, and it looked like a pretty cool product. And I said, I'll talk to you, because that's my job, is to investigate everything and then give an honest opinion on it. And so he comes in, and I had made a comment like, hey, you're not associated with a payment processor, right? Or a POS. Like, this is an standalone loyalty we can bolt on to something. Yeah. He kept saying it. So he finally comes in, we do the whole presentation. It's a badass product. I could see you using it with some of the stuff we were doing. And then he's like, well, let me talk about your credit card process. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, in order to do this, it doesn't cost this because we add on to your credit card. And I said, dude, I even asked this question. At what point do you think the marketing guy is going to be in charge of making what decision this 4-restaurant location does with their damn credit cards? Like they would never trust me with that. If they did, they need to had their heads checked. But that was like you mentioned with the point of sales, that I've seen restaurants that are stuck or the pain point to move away from the point of sale because of the other things that are with it. And like the back end of it, a lot of companies will call that they're a sticky company because, hey, if they leave us, their website goes away, their app goes away, their credit card. And now you got a company using a shitty point of sale because of the headache to move. So I love the fact that Q, and I know that was something with Peter when he switched their prior point of sale. I'm pretty confident that it was tied to a credit card processor, and that was a big headache that they had to overcome.
Yep, exactly. But I'd be curious to the genesis of Garrett's question, because I think, so if he's saying like the guest pays with cash and then gets a discount, in other words.
A rebate, like a rebate for not using credit card.
And I just, like you said, I think cash is going away.
Yeah,
there are still people that have cash. I mean, we still need to put tills out. It kills me, but we still need to put tills out with our POS, Oh,
I still crack up because not to go down a different road, but I was cracking up during the whole pandemic where there's guards for everything, but then we're all handing a $5 bill to each other that's been passed around to 500 people, and who knows where. Maybe been a cocaine straw at some point. I don't know, but I'm like, this is probably the most infected thing out there. But people still take it. And like they always joke that the penny costs more to make than it actually is worth. It's like, why are we making it still? Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on. How can people, I got in the comments on here in the description, there's your Instagram, there's your LinkedIn. You've got here the podcast. Is it on all the podcasting forms? Is it also on video anywhere?
Heck yeah. So its primary channel is audio. So, all the Spotify, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, all the ones. I think our top two are Spotify and iTunes. We do put the whole video up on YouTube as well. We don't have as much of an audience there, but I know that my husband watches it on YouTube, my kids sometimes, but we just started putting the full episodes up there. And we always post like video vignettes on LinkedIn and on social as well. And I try to pick out like the most salient content, like the content that I think is going to be most thought-provoking to audiences in the world at large. And that's what I try to put in like a 2-3 minute video. So I'm helping like get the word out, educate people, make them think about what they're doing. Yeah.
I love it. Have your kids' friends run across the podcast or your content yet?
Not really, because listen, it's mom's podcast. It's not that relatable to them. Like I'm talking about restaurants and business generally, although I've really veered over. I'm on a culture, labor, and leadership series now.
Okay.
I started it because I'm like, listen, this is the most pressing, we can talk about marketing all day, but the number one problem restaurants are dealing with right now is labor and supply chain, but really labor. So I started this labor. I'm like, I'm doing a labor series. And then I'm like, snap, this isn't a labor series. This is a leadership and employee retention and a culture series. Like it is all about that. We have a thinning workforce, and restaurants are going to have to change how they look at their people and the way that they attract people and retain people, or they're not going to have people. Right.
That ought to be our next conversation, because I do Wednesdays on the first introduction, and then Fridays I do what I call deep dives. And I agree with you. Culture is huge at our company. I was at a restaurant recently where the server was all excited. She was going to the beach the next week, and she'd never been. I'm like, and she's in her 40s, and she's like, well, we don't get paid time off. We don't get this. Like at our company, now we're a different company, but our employees get 7 weeks of paid time off. Everybody.
Do they take it?
Yeah. Oh, they have to. There's like right now we have 5 people off this week. We have 5 weeks that are pre-scheduled, and everybody's broken into teams. It's 5 weeks of mandatory time off. And then they have their 2 weeks of paid time. Like, can use how they want to. We are. And I think that's a huge element. It's amazing to me that the restaurants, like that was always the joke, like, oh, you're going to end up flipping burgers. So there was so much negative around it, but also, not only do these people, in my opinion, a lot of restaurants, the employees didn't get the vacation, the free time, the sick time. I mean, you got single mom with 2 kids that's got kids that they're sick or they got to pick up from school. And the flexibility of shifts is always great, but I think there's a deeper problem there with regards to understanding how people like time. Like I'll give you a great example with us, and we can go deeper in this again, but we have a 3-day weekend every month. And it came up because I love Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and Thanksgiving, because it always, to me, it's like that 3 days, like, oh shit. Well, we looked at it and we made it mandatory. So like, I think August this year is National Root Beer Float Day. We're taking off because we couldn't find a holiday. And so I like root beer. And so we said, hey, we're going to celebrate National Root Beer Float Day. And we have a 3-day weekend to celebrate it. So just to have fun. But there is a huge issue with the culture in the restaurant business. It's also in the retail business. It's in the car business, because I have connections there. And it's the same thing. It just comes down to treating people how you'd want to be treated. And a lot of times that just kind of goes by the wayside.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it isn't just restaurants, right? I mean, it's a lot of the service sectors and service employees, and it's all companies. I mean, I'm leading now self-care sessions at our company, right? The demographic of workers is changing. There's a thinning workforce, legit. There's a workers' economy gap. You know, it's not going to be filled anytime soon. And the difference in generational, the way that the Zillennials, if you could, put the two together, the Gen Z and the millennials are working.
I've never heard that one.
Zillennials. Yeah, I picked that up a couple of weeks ago and I was like, oh, that's good. Yeah. It's essentially the under 40-year-olds.
Okay.
Or 35, maybe. I don't know. Gen Z and Zillennials. The things they're looking for are very different than when I grew up and what I was expected to do in the workplace. It was like, you just grind. Yeah. And it ain't like that anymore. And so there needs to be a cultural shift. And the thing about restaurants is, though, there is a legacy of abuse in restaurants, like toxic work environments in restaurants is very prevalent, things like addiction and mental health. I mean, a little bit higher percentage of workers in restaurants are that demographic. And, I could put myself in there too, right? Like, so it's sort of like, being more aware of these things. I mean, I think overall as a society, we're being more mindful of this stuff, but in restaurants, particularly having these conversations, being mindful of flexibility, people that have kids. I was fascinated by the Chick-fil-A guy in Florida who did the 4-day work week. Who switched to the 4-day. I just thought that was like brilliant. I mean, I called him, I had to talk to him. I wanted to get him on my show, but I had a long conversation with him, but I never got him on the podcast. He's so darn busy. He's the number one Chick-fil-A franchisee in the country, and revenue, sales growth. And he went to this 4-day work week, and they're still kind of testing it. But what he found is the under 25s don't want it.
Yeah, we found it. We went to it 2 years ago. Yeah. We took every Wednesday. Every Wednesday was mandatory off. Yeah, and except for like me, me and a couple of the key people stayed on, but every employee, the goal was every Wednesday off. I got it from a company in New Zealand. Guy in New Zealand found that people think a long weekend's better. He found that a midday, a midweek, a Wednesday, because that way they're always a day away from a day off. And most people don't, if you got a husband and wife, the other spouse doesn't have that flexibility. So if you're the spouse that have Wednesdays off, it's like, hey, can you do this? Can you get the car to the shop? Can you do this? And it now eliminates that kind of negative. And we tried to do it, and like, it never worked. Like we had 23, 24, 25, 30. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm working. Like, we're off. You're off. I'm good. And so we thought about the 4-day weekend. So then that's when we went to the mandatory weeks off. Cause in my mind, looking forward to it was always cool. And I saw a study that was a company in Tennessee. And I saw this like 15 years ago. It was a manufacturing facility somewhere near Cookeville, Tennessee, I recall. And he had like 73% turnover annually, which was terrible, obviously. And he did a research because like, I don't think I'm that bad of an employer. What's going on? Well, he did a bunch of research and he found that it wasn't him. It was the fact that a lot of his employees were stressed out because they never had vacation. They never had time off, and that they had stress with their spouse because of that. And the problem they found was that they each had 2 weeks vacation and off time. Well, the kids get sick. This happens. Well, next thing you know, one of the spouses has used up their time to go on vacation or sick time to go do other stuff. And so when it gets time to maybe have a vacation, the other one doesn't have vacation time. And then on top of that, they can't afford the vacation. So he went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Is not too far from him. He bought a couple, log cabins there. And he came out and said, every 12 weeks the 12th week is a mandatory week off. And one of those times you have to use the cabin, and the company gives you a per diem to get there, get back and eat food. and his turnover went to like 20% within 18 months,
Wow.
because now all of a sudden his employees were the spouse that had the extra time off, that when Johnny got sick or the car needed repaired or something was happening, that the other one didn't have to take it off. So when it came time for vacation, they all had time off. And oh, by the way, my company has a place that we get to use for free, and we get $500 to get there and get back. And it made the culture so much better.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. So that's the cool things out there. Well, I appreciate your time. I think we will come on here again and figure out a way to go deeper into that, because you're exactly right that there's a big gap in the workforce of what people like my dad, who's 75, even me, I'm 45. I'm a grinder, a hustler. It doesn't bother me to work. But at the same time, I realize you've got to adapt to the people around you. You can't expect everybody to be like you,
Right.
And so I think that's a key element. I had an employee recently walk up and like, hey, do you mind if I run down to the store and get something? And I'm like, was there something wrong with your legs? Like, what do you mean? Like,
why are you asking me?
why are you asking him? Well, my other boss, you had to like tell him when you left the building. I'm like, well, your other boss is a jackass. Like, go for a walk, go get a Coke, go for a 20-minute, whatever makes you happy. I'm confident you're going to do what you're supposed to do here, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's a lot of restaurant workers that don't have that capability, right? I mean, I work sometimes. I go and work at some of the joints around my house here. And I mean, I know the managers, and, they're doing clopens all the time. They're working 12-hour shifts. They're exhausted, So, I mean, I think it's a little bit slower and harder to bring to the restaurants, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's just an excuse. Like, we're just that's where the reinvention comes in. We're so used to hiring restaurant workers in a certain way to perform in a very transactional way. Someone said to me, they're not rental cars. We need to realize they're not rental cars. They're actually people. So yeah, I really encourage people to think outside the box when it comes to that sort of stuff in the culture and the people side of it. Because if you're not treating your people well, they're not going to treat the guests well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate your time. I'll get with Gabe on my team. Gabe, if you're listening or watching, which you eventually will, get this young lady back on. Let's talk more about culture.
He's a rock star. You're right about him. I liked him. I chatted with him a little bit.
Hey, he's
like,
awesome.
Why are you tracking me down, buddy? What are you about? Like, yeah, great guy. He kept pinging me.
Oh yeah, he doesn't give up. When we find somebody that we know we got to talk to, he's a bulldog. He gets them on here.
Yeah.
So awesome. There's the website. There's the podcast. Make sure you check it out. That's all we got, ma'am. I appreciate your time, and have an amazing rest of your day.
You too. Take care. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.